You rise at 5 a.m. because something inside you has already begun to ache before the alarm even sounds. Not the sharp ache of hunger or cold, but the dull, persistent weight of knowing the day will slip past again unless you seize it first. You have felt this before many mornings, many years. The pillow calls with the same quiet lie it always has, 5 more minutes will not matter. Yet every time you grant it, the lie grows heavier. By the time you finally open your eyes, the morning has already claimed a small piece of your sovereignty. You are no longer the one deciding how the hours begin. The hours have decided for you. I do not speak to you as though this is a new discovery. You already know it in your bones. The question is not whether the pattern exists. The question is why you still permit it. Consider what happens in those stolen minutes or in the full hour you sometimes allow yourself to steal. The body remains in the half-light of sleep, but the mind drifts toward rehearsal. You rehearse the excuses you will need later. I was tired, the night was long. Tomorrow I will start properly. You rehearse the small defeat so convincingly that by the time your feet touch the floor, the day already feels borrowed rather than owned. That rehearsal is not innocent. It is the first act of surrender. The Stoic does not rise early because the hour itself holds magic. Dawn is indifferent. It arrives whether you witness it or not. The hour matters only because it is the first board. You must defend. If you cannot hold the line at 5, you will not hold it at 8, at noon, at dusk. Every later discipline rests upon this one. Lose the morning and the afternoon becomes apology. Lose enough afternoons and the years become regret. You may tell yourself that discipline is about grand gestures, quitting a vice overnight, running a marathon, rewriting your entire life in a single furious season. Those gestures are rare and often illusory. Real discipline is far quieter and far more merciless. It is the refusal to negotiate with the body when the body whispers for comfort. It is the choice to stand when every instinct pulls you back toward the sheets. Look carefully at the moment just before you decide. There is a narrow instant when 2 futures stand equal. One future contains silence, cold air against the skin, the first breath of deliberate movement, the slow unfolding of a day shaped by your own hand. The other future contains warmth, darkness, the soft betrayal of delay, and the certainty that you will spend the next 16 hours trying to recover what you just gave away. Most men never notice that instant. They slide past it without marking it, as though choice itself were optional, but you have noticed it. That is why the ache exists. The ache is the soul reminding you that you are still capable of choosing otherwise, and that each time you choose wrongly, the reminder grows sharper. There is no punishment harsher than self-betrayal that goes unacknowledged. When you lie back down, you do not merely rest, you quietly agree with a part of yourself that says mastery is not for you, that restraint is too heavy a burden, that the ordinary drift is sufficient. And every agreement of that kind etches itself deeper into your character until one day you wake and find the man you hope to become has become a stranger who no longer even argues with you. I have stood at that border many times. I have lost more mornings than I care to count. Each loss taught me the same lesson: the cost is never immediate. The cost arrives later in the tone of irritation that slips out at noon, in the fatigue that has no physical cause, in the dull certainty that whatever I achieve today will feel borrowed rather than earned. The morning is not the whole battle, but it is the ground upon which the battle is either won or conceded before the sun has fully risen. So when the moment comes again, and it will come tomorrow and the day after, do not ask whether you feel ready. Readiness is a myth invented by the part of you that prefers comfort. Ask instead, am I willing to treat this hour as though it were the only vote I cast today on who I will become? If the answer is no, then lie back down without shame, but understand what you are signing. You are signing for another day in which the current carries you rather than the other way around. You are signing for the slow erosion of the man who once believed he could master himself. If the answer is yes, even if it is whispered, even if the body protests, then rise, not because the hour demands it, not because some ancient maxim commands it. Rise because you have looked at the 2 futures and chosen the harder one, and in that single, small act of choice you have already begun to change everything. The change will not announce itself with trumpets. It will arrive in fragments, a clearer thought at 7 o'clock, a word unsaid in anger at 10, a decision held steady at 3 when every impulse was to collapse. Those fragments will accumulate. Over weeks they will form habits. Over months they will form character. Over years they will form a life that no longer apologizes for its own existence, but none of it begins until you stand. So stand. The room is cold. The floor is hard. Your limbs are heavy. None of that matters. What matters is the quiet knowledge that you have just refused to be carried. That refusal is the first true motion of the day, and it is enough for now. You have stood. The floor meets your feet like an old adversary cold, unyielding, familiar. For a breath or two, the victory feels almost complete. But victory at 5 in the morning is never final. It is only provisional. The real test begins now, in the silence that follows the act of rising. Most men believe the difficulty ends when the body leaves the bed. They congratulate themselves too soon. They mistake the first motion for mastery. Yet the body, once upright, does not immediately surrender its claims. It continues to negotiate. The shoulders slump toward the comfort of leaning. The eyes seek the dim glow of a screen as though light itself were owed to them. The mind, still thick with sleep, offers the first quiet suggestions. Sit. Scroll. Delay the next step, just a little longer. These are not accidents. They are the remnants of habit asserting their old rights. You feel it now, don't you? That gentle pull back toward inertia. It is not loud. It does not shout. It murmurs. And because it murmurs, it is dangerous. The loud temptations, anger, lust, greed are easier to recognize and therefore easier to refuse. The quiet ones wear the face of reason. You've already done the hard part. Rest a moment. But rest, in this context, is never rest. It is retreat disguised as mercy. Stand straighter, not for posture's sake, but to remind the frame that it answers to you, not the other way around. Feel the spine lengthen, the chest open slightly against the chill. This small adjustment is deliberate. It costs nothing in effort, yet reclaims a fragment of authority. Every inch you claim back from slouch is an inch the morning cannot steal. Now walk slowly, without hurry, to the window or the door or simply across the room. Do not rush toward productivity as though busyness were the opposite of laziness. Busyness is often only another form of avoidance. Walk instead to feel the transition from horizontal surrender to vertical responsibility. Each step is a sentence in the declaration you are writing with your body. I am here. I choose to be here. The day does not own me yet. In this quiet transit, the mind will attempt its first real assault. Memories of yesterday's failures will surface, not the dramatic ones, but the small, accumulating ones, the word you left unsaid in kindness, the task postponed until it grew teeth, the promise to yourself broken without ceremony. These recollections arrive not to torment, but to test. Will you allow them to pull you backward into guilt, or will you let them pass like clouds across a winter sky? Guilt is seductive because it feels noble. It pretends to be conscience. But unchecked guilt is paralysis. It keeps you reviewing the past instead of inhabiting the present. The Stoic does not ignore yesterday's errors. He inspects them briefly, extracts the lesson, and then releases them. To hold them longer is to pay interest on a debt already settled. So when the memory rises, perhaps the face of someone you disappointed, perhaps the mirror showing a man who has not yet matched his own expectations, look at it directly. Do not flinch. Do not embellish it with self-pity. Ask only, what does this teach me about where my discipline failed? Then let it go. Not out of forgiveness for yourself that comes later, if at all, but out of refusal to let yesterday tax today. You are now at the threshold of the routine itself. Not the list of actions you have read in books, not the 10-step formula promising transformation. Those are scaffolding. The routine that changes everything is never the steps themselves. It is the attention you bring to each one. Attention is the rarest currency you possess. Spend it carelessly here, and the rest of the day will be spent in deficit. Begin with water, not because hydration is virtuous in some abstract sense, but because the body, after hours of stillness, is dry and sluggish. To drink deliberately is to signal to every cell, we are awake. We are choosing vitality over stagnation. Hold the glass. Feel its weight. Taste the clarity of the water. These small sensations anchor you. They pull you out of the drifting mind and back into the immediate. Next, the breath. Not elaborate pranayama or counted cycles borrowed from distant traditions. Simply sit on the floor if you can bear it, on a hard chair if you must, and breathe as though the breath were the only thing happening in the world. Inhale through the nose, slow enough that the passage of air becomes audible to you alone. Exhale longer than you inhale. Let the pause between breaths lengthen naturally until it feels almost uncomfortable. Then begin again. Why this? Because the breath is the border between the involuntary and the voluntary. You cannot choose not to breathe forever, but you can choose how you breathe right now. To govern the breath is to practice governing the impulses that will arrive later: anger at a slight, fear at uncertainty, desire for distraction. If you cannot steady the breath when the room is quiet and the world is asleep, you will not steady the mind when the world wakes and begins to demand. Sit in that stillness until the first real discomfort appears, the knee that twinges, the back that protests, the mind that grows restless and offers escape. Do not move at the first signal. Wait. Let the discomfort arrive fully. Observe it without commentary, then decide whether to shift or to endure. Most mornings you will shift. That is not failure, it is information. It tells you where your tolerance still lies thin. Note it. Tomorrow you will stay a breath longer. When you finally rise from this place, the hour has advanced, yet the day still feels young. The light outside is thin, uncertain. The house is silent except for the small sounds you make, the creak of the floor, the soft close of a door, the pour of more water. These sounds are yours. They belong to no one else yet. In this ownership lies the beginning of real power, not over others, but over the self that once allowed the world to dictate its rhythm. You have not yet done anything the world would call significant. No words written, no weights lifted, no fortunes made. And yet something fundamental has shifted. You have refused the first negotiation. You have claimed the first hour. You have practiced attention when no one was watching. That practice is the seed. Everything else, the clarity of thought at midday, the restraint in conversation, the courage to say no when every instinct says yes, grows from this quiet planting. But seeds do not flourish if left untended. The morning is only the soil turned over. The real work is in returning tomorrow and the day after, and refusing to let familiarity dull the edge of the choice. So walk now toward the next deliberate act, whatever small ritual you have chosen as the second pillar. A page read from a book that demands reflection. A journal entry that records not what happened yesterday, but what you intend today. A stretch that reminds the body it is not yet rigid. Whatever it is, do it slowly. Do it completely. Do it as though no other task exists, because in this moment none does. The rest of the world still sleeps. Let it. Your work is here, in the half-light, where no applause reaches and no witness judges. This is where everything begins to change, not with noise, not with spectacle, but with the patient, repeated refusal to be carried. Continue. The hour is still yours. You have claimed the breath. The room remains the same: cold walls, faint light creeping under the door, but you are no longer the same within it. The breath has done its work quietly. It has narrowed the world to this single point of contact between air and body. Everything else recedes. The mind, for a few minutes at least, stops running ahead or lagging behind. It simply arrives. This arrival is fragile. Do not mistake its fragility for weakness. Fragility here means it requires protection. One careless thought, One glance toward the phone lying on the table, and the narrow focus shatters. You will feel the pull immediately, the mind offering escape under the guise of just checking one thing. Refuse it, not with force, not with anger at yourself. Refuse it with the same calm certainty you used to rise from the bed. The refusal does not need volume, it needs repetition. Now turn to the body's next claim, hunger, or what passes for it at this hour. The stomach may rumble, or it may not. Either way, the impulse arises to eat immediately to fill the emptiness before the day has properly begun. This impulse is ancient, trustworthy in survival but treacherous in mastery. To eat the first thing that presents itself is to hand the morning over to sensation rather than intention. Delay the meal, not as punishment, not as some ascetic display. Delay it because hunger, when observed without haste, becomes a teacher. Sit with it. Feel the hollow space beneath the ribs. Notice how the mind interprets it, as emergency, as discomfort to be erased at once. Yet the body does not collapse from a few hours without food. What collapses, if you feed it instantly, is the space between impulse and action. That space is where self-mastery lives. Erase the space, and you erase the possibility of choice. While you wait, return to the page. Not a screen. Screens belong to the later hours when distraction is inevitable. A physical page, perhaps the worn copy of meditations or letters from a Stoic that has traveled with you through better and worse seasons. Open it at random if you must, but read with the same attention you gave the breath. Do not skim for inspiration. Read as though the words were written to you alone, in this exact moment of your life. Marcus once wrote that you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. The sentence lands differently at 5 in the morning than it does at noon. At noon the world has already crowded in with its noise and demands. At 5 the world is still asleep. The sentence therefore arrives unfiltered. It asks you directly, do you believe this yet? Or do you still act as though the morning's mood, the body's fatigue, the lingering shadow of yesterday's failures hold the reins? Read slowly enough that the words have time to settle. If a line resists you, if it feels too distant or too severe, stay with it. Do not move on until you have felt its weight. Perhaps it accuses you of something you have long avoided admitting. Perhaps it reminds you of a promise you made to yourself and broke without ceremony. Let the accusation stand. Do not rush to defend yourself. Defense at this hour is usually only another evasion. When the reading ends, close the book and sit in the silence it leaves behind. No music, no background hum. Silence is not emptiness. It is the medium in which reflection becomes possible. In silence you hear what the noise usually drowns, the low current of anxiety that runs beneath your days, the quiet justifications you offer yourself for small compromises, the faint voice that still believes tomorrow will be different without any change today. Listen to that voice without judgment. Judgment would only drive it deeper underground. Simply listen. Then ask it the only question that matters. What are you afraid will happen if I refuse to compromise any longer? The answer may surprise you. Often it is not failure itself that terrifies, but the loss of excuses. Without excuses, success or failure rests entirely on what you actually do. That nakedness is frightening because it removes every cushion between you and reality. Yet it is also liberating. When there are no more cushions, there is nothing left to hide behind. You either act or you do not. The ambiguity ends. From this silence, move to the next deliberate act, whatever small labor you have chosen as the third pillar of the morning. It may be to write a single sentence setting the intention for the day. Not vague aspirations, be better, stay positive, but precise commitments. Today I will speak only when necessary. Today I will finish the task I postponed yesterday before beginning anything new. Today I will notice when irritation rises and choose not to feed it. Write the sentence by hand. The physical act of forming letters slows the mind enough to make the promise real. Type it, and it remains abstract. Ink it, and it becomes a contract witnessed by your own hand. Or perhaps the labor is physical, a series of slow push-ups against the floor, or holding a plank until the shoulders burn, or walking in place with deliberate steps while counting breaths. The form matters less than the intention. The intention is to remind the body that it serves, not rules. To remind the mind that discomfort is not an emergency, but a signal that growth is possible. During this labor, thoughts will rush in plans for the day, worries about what others will think, memories of past weaknesses. Let them come. Do not fight them. Fighting gives them strength. Observe them as you observed the hunger, present, insistent, but not sovereign. Each time a thought tries to pull you away from the movement, return to the sensation in the muscles, the rhythm of the breath, the contact between skin and floor. Return without self-reproach. The return itself is the practice. When the labor ends, stand again. Feel the slight warmth that has gathered in the limbs, the clearer pulse in the chest. This is not euphoria. It is simply the body acknowledging that it has been used deliberately rather than ignored or indulged. There is dignity in that acknowledgement, even if no one else sees it. Look toward the window now. The light has strengthened slightly. Dawn is no longer a promise, it is arriving. In this half-light, the world still belongs to you alone. Soon it will wake voices, messages, obligations, the thousand small claims others make on your attention. But for these remaining minutes, the claim is yours. Use them to inspect the morning so far. Not to praise yourself, that would be vanity. Not to criticize, that would be cruelty. Simply inspect. Where did the negotiation attempt to begin again? Where did I almost yield? Where did I hold? The inspection is brief, a minute or two. Then release it. The morning has not ended, but its foundation has been laid. What comes next? Work, conversation, difficulty will test that foundation, not build it. You have built enough for one dawn. Now step into the day that waits beyond the door. Carry the silence with you, carry the refusals, carry the small contracts written in breath, in ink, in muscle. They are lighter than you think, and they are the only possessions that cannot be taken away. You step from the quiet room into the corridor, or perhaps only to the edge of the kitchen table, carrying the silence like a fragile vessel. It is not yet broken, but you know it can be. The first real test of the morning arrives not in grand temptation, but in the small, ordinary claims the day begins to make even before the sun clears the horizon. A notification hums somewhere, perhaps the phone you left charging, perhaps a device in another room. The sound is faint, almost polite. Yet it carries the weight of everything you have so far refused. Do not answer it yet. Let it exist without your response. In that refusal lies the second layer of the change you seek. The morning routine is not a sequence of virtuous acts performed in isolation. It is a series of refusals that protect what you have begun to build. Each refusal costs a little more than the last, because the world outside grows louder with every passing minute. The discipline that changes everything is measured not by what you do, but by what you decline to do, and no one would blame you for yielding. Sit now at the place you have chosen for reflection, perhaps the same hard chair, perhaps the floor again, if the knees allow. Place before you only what is necessary, the notebook, the pen, a cup of water that has cooled since you poured it. No food yet. Hunger remains your quiet companion, sharpening awareness rather than dulling it. In this minimal setting, the mind has fewer places to hide. Open the notebook to a fresh page. The blankness stares back, expectant. Do not rush to fill it. First, write the date, nothing more. The simple act of marking time reminds you that days are finite, that this one will not return. Then, beneath it, record 3 truths you observed in the earlier hours. First, the precise instant when the body tried to reclaim the bed and how close you came to granting it. Second, the moment the breath felt labored and the thought arose to abandon the sitting. Third, the pull toward distraction when silence became uncomfortable and what excuse the mind offered to break it. Write them plainly, without embellishment or self-censure. These are not confessions to be forgiven, they are data. They show where the fault lines lie in your current character. To see them clearly is to begin repairing them, hide from them, and the repairs never start. After the truths, write the intention again, not as a hopeful wish, but as a binding decision. Today I will treat every interruption as a question of sovereignty. Will I allow it to rule the hour, or will I rule the hour despite it? The sentence is not poetry. It is a guardrail. When the day grows crowded, you can return to it mentally and ask, am I still holding this line? Close the notebook. The writing has taken perhaps 10 minutes. In that time, the light has shifted again, sharper now, less forgiving. Dawn no longer whispers, it declares. With the declaration comes the first true pressure, the knowledge that the protected bubble of the early hours is thinning. Soon others will wake, family, colleagues, the endless stream of obligations that feel urgent because they arrive from outside. Their urgency is real, but it is not sovereign. Yours must be. Stand and move to the window, look out. The street or the field or the neighboring houses remain still, wrapped in the last remnants of night. No one else has yet claimed this light. In this solitude, feel the weight of your aloneness, not as loneliness, but as responsibility. No one will force you to continue what you have started. No one will notice if you falter now and slip back into the familiar drift. The absence of external witness makes the choice heavier, not lighter. Mastery begins precisely where applause ends. Turn from the window and face the next deliberate labor. Perhaps it is to prepare the body further, a sequence of movements done without haste or flourish, 10 slow squats, feeling each joint protest and then yield, or a walk around the room, around the house, around the block, if the cold allows, counting nothing but the rhythm of footfall and breath. The purpose is not exertion for its own sake. The purpose is to teach the limbs that effort at this hour is chosen, not imposed, to let the body know that it will move when you decide, not when convenience or mood permits. During this movement, the mind will wander again toward the day's schedule, toward imagined conversations, toward fears of what might go wrong. When it wanders, do not chase it with frustration. Simply note the departure, there it goes. Then return to the sensation of the sole against the floor, the rise and fall of the chest, the slight burn in the thighs. The return is the practice. Each return strengthens the muscle of attention. Over time, the wanderings grow shorter, the returns more automatic, but never automatic enough to take for granted. If doubt enters, now doubt that this quiet insistence can truly alter a life. Do not argue with it. Doubt is honest. It has seen you falter before. Let it speak. You have tried mornings like this. You have written intentions before. They faded by noon. Why should today be different? Answer it only with continuation. Do not promise transformation. Do not swear oaths to yourself. Simply continue the movement, the breath, the deliberate step. Continuation in the presence of doubt is more powerful than any vow made in certainty. Vows are cheap when the body feels strong. Continuation when doubt presses close is expensive and therefore real. When the labor ends, pause. Feel the warmth spreading through the frame, the pulse steady but not frantic. This is not triumph. It is proof of concept. The body obeyed. The mind returned. The hour held. Now, at last, break the fast, but break it deliberately, not with whatever is quickest or sweetest, but with what sustains without seducing. A handful of nuts, an egg cooked plainly, bread without excess. Eat slowly. Taste each bite as though it were the first food of the day, which it is. Eating in haste is another surrender to sensation. Eating with attention is another refusal to let the body dictate terms. As you eat, let the mind rest on a single question. What would it mean to live this way not once, but every morning, not as a temporary experiment, but as the baseline of existence? The question is not rhetorical. It is severe. To answer it honestly requires looking at the patterns you have tolerated for years, the late rises, the reactive days, the evenings spent in recovery rather than preparation. To see those patterns without flinching is painful. Yet pain here is diagnostic, not punitive. Finish the meal, clear the plate. Wash it immediately, not because cleanliness is next to godliness, but because small completions prevent small accumulations of disorder. Disorder in the physical space mirrors disorder in the mind. To leave the plate is to leave a foothold for later excuses. You stand now at the edge of the protected morning. The clock has moved forward. The world outside begins to stir, distant sounds of doors, engines, voices. The bubble thins further. Soon it will burst entirely. Before it does, take one final act of reclamation. Stand in the center of the room, close your eyes, and breathe once more as you did earlier, slow, deliberate, unhurried. In this breath, gather everything so far: the rise from the bed, the refusal of distraction, the attention to hunger and breath and movement, the truths written, the intention set. Hold that gathering in the chest for a count of 5. Then release it, not as a sigh of relief, but as a quiet commitment carried forward. The day waits beyond this breath. Enter it not as a man hoping to survive it, but as one who has already begun to shape it from within. The change is no longer a possibility. It is underway. You cross the threshold now, not just of the room, but of the morning's protected enclosure. The light has hardened into day. Sounds from beyond the walls arrive in fragments. A distant engine turning over, the first bird testing its voice, perhaps the low murmur of a neighbor's radio. These are the advanced scouts of the world's claim on your attention. They do not demand yet, they remind. The reminder is enough to stir the old reflex, to hurry, to prepare defenses, to arm against what is coming. Do not hurry. Hurrying is the body's way of pretending control when control has already begun to slip. The man who rushes from bed to task has not mastered the morning. He has merely traded one form of servitude for another. Slow your step. Let the pace remain deliberate, as it was in the breath, in the movement, in the eating. Deliberation is not luxury here. It is armor. When the pace quickens without your consent, the mind follows. When the mind races, judgment falters. When judgment falters, the day is no longer yours. Find the place where you will meet the first real obligation of the day. Perhaps the desk where work begins. Perhaps the kitchen counter where the family's needs will soon appear. Perhaps simply the chair by the window where you sit to face whatever arrives first. Before you sit, stand for a moment longer. Feel the floor beneath you. Feel the slight residual warmth from the earlier labor in your limbs. This standing is not ceremony. It is reconnaissance. You are checking whether the foundation laid in darkness still holds under the light. It will hold, but only if you continue to refuse what seeks to undermine it. Sit. Open whatever tool you use to meet the day's demands, the notebook again, a planner, the screen if necessity requires it. But before you touch the first task, pause. This pause is critical. Without it, you slide directly from your own rhythm into the world's. The world's rhythm is reactive. Emails arrive. Requests form. Urgencies multiply like shadows at dusk. To enter that current without a final act of sovereignty is to concede the morning's guns before they have time to root. In this pause, ask one question only. What is the one thing that, if left undone today, would make tomorrow harder to face? Not the loudest thing, not the most immediate, the one whose neglect would compound quietly, like interest on a debt ignored. Write it down, not as a to-do item among others, but as the non-negotiable. Everything else today will arrange itself around this. If the day conspires to bury it, you will unearth it again and again until it is finished. This single commitment is the thread that connects the solitary dawn to the shared day. Without it, the morning becomes a private ritual disconnected from life. With it, the ritual becomes the spine of the life itself. Now begin. The first task will feel heavier than it should not because it is difficult, but because it arrives after you have already spent so much attention on yourself. The temptation is to reward that effort with ease, to choose the lighter item first, to clear small debts so the mind feels unburdened. Resist it. Ease is the enemy of momentum here. Begin with the thing that resists most. The resistance itself is the signal that this is where growth waits. As you work, watch the mind's negotiations resume in subtler forms. A thought drifts. This could wait until I've had coffee. Another, I deserve a break after such an early start. A third, checking messages won't take long, it will clear my head. Each thought arrives wearing the mask of practicality. Strip the mask. Ask, does this serve the commitment I made, or does it serve the part of me that still prefers comfort over completion? The answer will rarely be comfortable. Act on the uncomfortable one. Interruptions will come external first, perhaps a voice calling your name, a knock, a vibration from the device you have not yet silenced. When they arrive, do not react as though attacked. Meet them with the same calm inspection you used on hunger and doubt. Acknowledge the interruption. Decide whether it requires immediate response or can wait. If it can wait, let it wait. The power lies not in ignoring the world, but in choosing when to engage it. Internal interruptions are harder. Fatigue creeps in, not true exhaustion, but the familiar weariness that follows sustained attention. The shoulders tighten. The eyes strain. The mind offers escape, just 5 minutes. You've earned it. Recognize this as the same voice that once urged you back to the pillow. It has not left, it has only changed its argument. Answer it the same way, not with debate, but with continuation. One more sentence, one more breath, one more deliberate act. In these moments, the change becomes visible not in dramatic transformation, but in small refusals that accumulate. You refuse to check the phone during a difficult paragraph. You refuse to rise for unnecessary water when the body merely seeks distraction. You refuse to soften the wording of a hard truth you must write or speak. Each refusal is minor. Together they redraw the boundaries of what you will tolerate from yourself. Mid-morning arrives, the light is full now, unforgiving. The house has woken, fully sounds of movement, conversation, the clatter of daily life. The solitude that once protected you has dissolved. Yet something remains, an inner quiet that does not depend on external silence. This is the fruit of the early hours. It is not impervious to noise. It simply does not shatter under it. It absorbs, observes, chooses. When the first real difficulty of the day presents itself, perhaps a conversation that tests patience, perhaps a task that exposes weakness, return mentally to the dawn. Recall the instant you rose. Recall the breath held against discomfort. Recall the hunger observed without surrender. These recollections are not sentimental, they are evidence. Evidence that you have already done harder things today than this moment demands. Let that evidence steady the hand, the voice, the resolve. Do not expect perfection. Perfection is a fantasy that paralyzes more than it inspires. Expect only persistence. Persistence through irritation. Persistence through mediocrity, persistence through the ordinary dull ache of sustained effort. The man who persists when nothing applauds him is the man who begins to own his days rather than rent them. As noon approaches, the mornings, work will feel distant, almost dreamlike. Do not let it fade into nostalgia. Anchor it with one small ritual. Stand, walk to the window or the door, breathe once as you did at 5. In that breath, reaffirm the thread. The one non-negotiable remains. The refusals continue. The attention does not wander unchecked. Then return to the tasks. The afternoon will bring its own trials, fatigue deeper, distractions sharper, temptations more plausible. But you enter them not as the same man who once drifted through days, but as one who has already claimed the ground where battles are decided. That claim cannot be revoked by circumstance. It can only be surrendered by you. Do not surrender it. The light shifts again. Shadows lengthen. Hold the line. You have held the line through the morning's first trials. The noon sun now stands high, indifferent to your efforts, casting sharp shadows across the floor. The body feels the toll, not dramatic exhaustion, but the steady drain that comes from sustained refusal. The mind, too, has spent its reserves of attention. What remains is thinner, more brittle. This is the hour when many mornings collapse quietly, not in catastrophe, but in concession. A small permission granted here, another there, until the thread snaps without sound. Feel it now, the subtle loosening in the chest, the slight drift in focus, The bodies whisper that enough has been done. These are not signs of weakness. They are tests of depth. The discipline that changes everything does not live only in the dawn's clarity. It lives here in the midday haze, when the initial fire has cooled to embers and the world's demands press harder. Do not fight the fatigue with force. Force spends what little remains. Instead, observe it. Sit if you have been standing. Stand if you have been sitting. Change the posture deliberately, not to escape discomfort, but to meet it from a different angle. Notice how the shoulders want to round forward, how the eyes want to close for a moment longer than necessary. Let the noticing itself be the action. To notice without immediate correction is already a form of restraint. Correction will come, but only after acknowledgement. When the drift threatens to carry you fully, perhaps toward the couch, perhaps toward the screen that promises quick relief, return to the single commitment you wrote at dawn. Read it again if it is near. If not, recall it word for word. Today I will treat every interruption as a question of sovereignty. The sentence may feel distant now, almost abstract. That distance is the danger. Bring it close. Ask, has this moment already answered no? Have I allowed something external, or worse, something internal, to rule the hour? The answer will sting if it is yes. Let it sting. The sting is honest feedback. It tells you precisely where the boundary weakened. Do not rush to soothe it with self-forgiveness or justification. Forgiveness has its place, but not yet. First, repair. Repair means one deliberate act in the opposite direction. Rise if you have sunk. Close the tab if you have opened it. Speak the hard word if you have delayed it. The act need not be grand. It need only be contrary to the drift. In this repair lies the true deepening. The morning's refusals were foundational. They built the wall. Midday's repairs maintain it. Without them, the wall crumbles slowly, brick by unnoticed brick. You have seen it happen before, perhaps in weeks past, when a strong dawn dissolved into an afternoon of reaction, an evening of regret. The pattern is familiar. Familiarity makes it seductive. Seduction makes it dangerous. Look at the pattern without mercy, but also without cruelty. Mercy would soften the truth. Cruelty would paralyze you with shame. Neither serves. The truth is simple. You have surrendered afternoons before because the morning's momentum felt sufficient. It is never sufficient. Momentum fades. What endures is the habit of returning to center when momentum fails. Returning is harder than beginning. Beginning has novelty. Returning has only will. Practice the return now. Whatever small lapse has occurred in the last hour, perhaps a conversation turned sharp, perhaps a task left half done, perhaps only the mind wandering into fantasy, stop. Name it silently. This was a lapse. Then choose the next motion as though the lapse had not happened. Not to erase it, that cannot be done, but to deny it continuity. Continuity is what turns a single failure into a ruined day. Break the continuity. One clean act undoes more than 1,000 apologies. As you continue, the external world will test you further. A request arrives that feels reasonable on its surface. A colleague's urgency, a family member's need. These are not enemies, they are reality. Yet reality does not automatically dictate priority. You dictate priority by measuring each claim against the inner line you have drawn. If it aligns, meet it fully. If it pulls you sideways, decline it cleanly. No elaborate excuse, no resentment, only clarity, not now. Or, this must wait. Declining cleanly requires practice. At first it feels abrupt, almost rude. Over time it becomes the kindest thing you can offer both to others and to yourself. To say yes when your attention is already fractured is to give half a man. Half a man helps no one. The discipline no preserves the whole self for what truly matters. Midday fatigue will peak soon. When it does, do not push through as though endurance were virtue in itself. Virtue here is discernment. Discern whether the fatigue is true depletion or merely the mind's latest negotiation for rest. If it is true, rest deliberately. 10 minutes with eyes closed, breaths low. No thought allowed beyond the counting of inhales. If it is negotiation, refuse it the same way you refuse the bed. Stand, move. Engage the next deliberate task. In either case, the key is choice. Chosen rest rebuilds. Unchosen rest erodes. The difference is invisible to others, but you feel it in the quality of the hours that follow. As the afternoon deepens, the light will soften again. Shadows return. With them comes a dangerous temptation to regard the day as mostly done, to loosen the grip because the hardest part seems past. This is the hour of quiet betrayal. Many men fall here not from sudden weakness, but from the belief that partial victory entitles partial surrender. There is no partial victory in self-mastery. Victory is all or nothing, renewed each hour. Renew it now. Stand once more. Walk to the window or the open air if possible. Feel the changed quality of the light on your skin. Breathe as you did at dawn, slow, deliberate, unhurried. In this breath, gather the day so far, the rise, the refusals, the repairs, the returns. Acknowledge what held and what slipped. Then release the slips without clinging. Clinging gives them power they do not deserve. Turn back to the remaining hours. They are fewer now, but no less important. The tasks that remain, however mundane, carry the same weight as those at dawn. Treat them accordingly. Finish what was begun. Complete what was promised. Leave no loose ends that will greet you tomorrow as accusation. When evening arrives, do not collapse into it. Meet it standing. Review the day not as a ledger of achievements, but as a map of choices. Where did sovereignty hold? Where did it waver? Mark the places of strength and the places of fracture. No judgment, only clarity. Then prepare for tomorrow. Lay out what is needed, the book, the notebook, the clothes for movement. Preparation is not optimism. It is responsibility. It tells the future self, I intend to meet you here again at 5, without negotiation. Finally, when the light fails and the house quiets, sit for one last deliberate breath. Hold it longer than feels comfortable. In that extended pause, feel the day's full weight settle, then let it go. Sleep will come not as escape, but as necessary repair. Accept it without clinging to wakefulness. Tomorrow waits on the other side. And tomorrow, when the ache returns before the alarm, you will remember this evening's commitment. You will rise, not because the routine demands it, but because you have chosen again and again that nothing else is acceptable. The change is no longer emerging. It is embedding, deeper with each deliberate dawn. You enter the evening now, not as a man winding down, but as one still holding the thread that began before light touched the sky. The shadows have lengthened across the floor. The air carries the faint coolness of approaching night. The body feels the accumulated hours, not sharp pain, but the deep, quiet fatigue that follows sustained choice. This fatigue is honest. It does not lie. It tells you exactly how much you have spent today in refusal, in return, in repair. Do not mistake it for permission to collapse. Collapse would be easy, familiar, almost deserved. Yet the discipline that changes everything does not end when the sun sets. It merely changes form. In the morning it was refusal of comfort. In the afternoon it was refusal of drift. In the evening it becomes refusal of premature release, refusal to let the day dissolve into numbness before it has been fully met. Sit where you sat this morning, if possible the same chair, the same hard surface. The familiarity is not sentimental. It is continuity. Continuity reminds you that the man who rose at 5 is the same man who sits here now. No separation, no division into morning self and evening self. The division is illusion, invented to excuse inconsistency. Erase it. Light a single lamp if the room has grown too dim. Not for comfort, but for clarity. In this small circle of light, open the notebook once more. The page from dawn is still there, the date, the 3 truths observed, the single non-negotiable commitment. Read them slowly without hurry. Let each word land again. They may feel distant, as though written by someone else. That distance measures how far the day has pulled you from center. Measure it honestly. Do not soften the assessment. Beneath what you wrote this morning, Add 3 more truths, those that emerged only after the light grew full. First, the precise moment when irritation rose in conversation and you almost let it speak unchecked. Second, the task where momentum faltered and the mind offered every plausible reason to postpone. Third, the small surrender to a distraction, to a softened standard, to a delayed response that felt insignificant in the moment but now reveals its cost. Write them plainly, no apology, no justification. These are not failures to be mourned, they are landmarks. They show where the wall held thin, where the sovereignty wavered. To see them clearly in the evening is to prepare the ground for tomorrow's stronger defense. Ignore them, and tomorrow repeats the same thin places. After the truths, write 1 sentence of resolution, not vague hope, but precise intention for the night and the next dawn. Tonight I will meet sleep as deliberately as I met waking. Tomorrow at 5 I will rise without negotiation, carrying forward what held today and repairing what slipped. Close the notebook. Set it aside. Now turn to the body's final claims of the day. Hunger may return, sharper now after hours of sustained effort. Feed it, but feed it without haste or excess. The meal is not reward, it is maintenance. Choose what nourishes without seducing simple food, plain preparation. Eat in silence if the house allows. If voices surround you, eat with attention to each bite, each swallow. Let the act remain deliberate even amid ordinary noise. Deliberation here protects the inner quiet from being drowned entirely. When the meal ends, clear everything immediately. Leave no trace of disorder for the morning to grit. Disorder left overnight becomes the first small negotiation before dawn, the excuse waiting on the counter. Remove it. The removal is small. Its effect is cumulative. Move now to the final physical act of the day. Not vigorous exercise that belongs to another hour. Something slower, gentler, but no less intentional, a sequence of stretches that lengthen what has tightened, or a slow walk through the house or garden, feeling each step as a return to the rhythm of breath and footfall. During this movement, do not let the mind rehearse tomorrow's tasks or replay today's lapses. When it tries, return to sensation, the pull in the hamstring, the cool air on the skin, the quiet creak of the floor. Sensation anchors, rehearsal loosens. If memories surface the sting of a word spoken too quickly, the weight of a promise half met, do not push them away. Invite them closer. Look at each one as you looked at hunger earlier, present, insistent, but not sovereign. Ask only, what does this reveal about where my restraint failed? Then release it. Not out of denial, but out of refusal to let yesterday's shadow tack. Tonight's rest. Rest itself must be prepared for. Do not fall into bed as though sleep were automatic. Prepare the space, dim the lights further, cool the room if you can, remove anything that invites distraction, a phone placed far from reach, clothes laid for dawn. These preparations are not ritual for its own sake. They are signals to the body and mind. We are choosing rest, not escaping into it. Lie down deliberately, not collapsing, not rushing. Lie as though lying were an act of will. Close the eyes. Begin the breath again, slower now, deeper. The exhale longer than the inhale. Let the pause at the bottom lengthen until the body signals for air. Then allow it. Repeat until the rhythm settles the pulse, quiets the surface thoughts. In this slowing, the day's events will pass before you like clouds, some dark, some light, most ordinary. Do not cling to any. Watch them arrive and depart. If one lingers, the memory of a lapse, the anticipation of tomorrow's difficulty, note its presence without judgment. Then return to the breath. The return is the final practice of the day. Each return trains the mind to release rather than grasp. Sleep will come gradually, unevenly. When it arrives, accept it without resistance. Resistance to sleep is another form of clinging to wakefulness as though wakefulness alone were productive. Sleep is productive. It is the body's silent labor, repairing what effort has worn. Trust it. Yet even as you drift toward it, hold one last awareness. Tomorrow the ache will return before the alarm. The same border will appear the narrow instant between two futures. In that instant, the evening's preparations will either support you or fail you. They will support you only if tonight's choices were deliberate, if the notebook was honest, if the body was met with restraint, if rest was chosen rather than fled to. When the ache comes, remember this evening's quiet. Remember the refusal to let the day end in drift. Remember the sentence written in the lamplight, "Tomorrow at 5 I will rise without negotiation." That sentence is not a promise to the future. It is a debt paid in advance. Pay it. The night deepens. The house falls silent. You have not merely survived the day. You have shaped it imperfectly, humanly, but deliberately. The shaping continues tomorrow, not because the routine requires it, but because you have come to require it of yourself. Word count 948. The quiet work of self-mastery is never finished, only deepened. If this reflection has stirred something in you, carry it forward not as inspiration, but as quiet responsibility. Return here when the ache returns, when the border appears again. Built by Stoicism remains a place for such returns, for the patient, repeated choosing that slowly redraws a life from within. Rest now. Tomorrow waits. The night has settled fully now. The house is still, the lamp extinguished, the only light a faint silver from the window where the moon has risen without fanfare. You lie. In the dark, body heavy against the mattress, mind no longer racing but drifting in slow, wide circles. This is the final border of the day, not the sharp line of dawn, but the soft, dissolving edge where wakefulness yields to rest. Here, in this yielding, the true measure of what you have done reveals itself. Do not rush towards sleep as though it were escape. Meet it as you met the morning, deliberately, without haste or resistance. The body will protest in small ways, limbs shifting for comfort, thoughts flickering like embers refusing to die. Let them flicker. Watch them without reaching. Each flicker is the last negotiation of the day, the final attempt by habit to reclaim what you have spent 20 hours defending. You feel it now, don't you? The quiet pull to review, to judge, to tally wins and losses as though the day were a ledger that must balance before closing. Resist that pull. The ledger is never complete while you are still awake. To force completion is to cling to control at the very moment control must be released. Release is not defeat, it is the necessary counterpart to the day's grip. Grip all day, and sleep becomes impossible. Release at night, and tomorrow's grip begins stronger. Breathe once more as you did at 5, slow, deliberate, unhurried. Inhale the cool air of the room. Exhale the accumulated heat of effort. Let each breath carry away one small attachment, the irritation that lingered from midday, the task left half finished, the word unspoken that still echoes. Do not force the carrying away. Simply allow it. Attachment dissolves not by willpower but by inattention. Turn the attention inward to the slow rise and fall of the chest. Everything else fades when the chest becomes the only world. In this narrowing, memories surface again, not the dramatic failures, but the quiet ones, the moment you almost scrolled instead of wrote, the instant irritation almost spoke unchecked, the subtle softening of a standard you had set at dawn. These memories arrive without accusation. They arrive as information. Information you already gathered in the notebook, in the pauses, in the returns. You need not gather it again. You need only acknowledge its presence and let it pass. If one memory clings harder than the others, if it brings a faint ache of regret or a sharper sting of self-reproach, do not fight it. Invite it fully into the breath. Feel where it lodges, the tightness in the throat, the weight in the stomach, the quickened pulse. Observe the lodging without commentary. Then, on the next exhale, imagine the sensation loosening, not vanishing, but loosening enough to move. Let it move through you and out. It does not disappear forever. It simply no longer owns this moment. This is the deepest work of the routine, not the rising, not the refusals, not the repairs, but the final release. Release teaches what grip alone cannot, that sovereignty includes knowing when to hold and when to let go. Hold too long, and you become rigid, brittle, unable to adapt. Let go too soon, and you become drift, carried by whatever current arrives. The balance is learned only through repetition, through days like this one, where you held through fatigue and light and noise, and now let go without collapse. As sleep approaches, the mind will offer one last gift, a vision of tomorrow. Not the anxious rehearsal of tasks, but a quiet glimpse of the same border waiting at 5. In that glimpse, see yourself rising not effortlessly, not heroically, but deliberately. See the floor cold again, the breath slow again, the first refusal the same. See it without romance. See it as fact. You have done it once today. You can do it again. That fact is enough. No more is needed. Let the vision fade. Do not hold it. Holding turns possibility into pressure. Possibility needs no pressure. It needs only space. The breath slows further. The body sinks deeper. The boundaries between you and the dark soften. In this softening, feel the day's full shape, not as a series of separate acts, but as one continuous motion. From the instant of rising to this instant of yielding, the motion was imperfect. It contained lapses, negotiations, returns, yet it was yours. You shaped it from within, even when the shaping felt invisible. That shaping is the change, not the grand alteration promised by impatient voices, not the sudden transformation that arrives in a single morning. The change is quieter, slower, more merciless in its patience. It is the accumulation of chosen moments when no one watched, when no reward waited, when the only witness was the self that knows the truth. Tomorrow the egg will return. The border will appear. In that appearance you will find not a new test, but the same one renewed. Meet it as you met today's, without certainty of victory, but with certainty of choice. Sleep now, not as reward, not as defeat. As the necessary pause between one deliberate day and the next, the night holds you. You have held the day, and in the holding you have begun, truly begun to change everything. If the ache wakes you before dawn, if the quiet pressure returns to remind you of what is possible, return here, not for motivation, but for the patient reminder that mastery is built breath by breath, refusal by refusal, release by release. Built by Stoicism stands as a quiet place for such returns, for the continued, unhurried work of becoming the man who no longer apologizes to himself for his own existence. Rest deeply. The border awaits.